us now is Senior Fellow of Economic Studies at the Brookings Institution and columnist for Bloomberg View, Justin Wolfers, who is also a professor at the University of Michigan. Justin, it's amazing that you even have time to be on the show given all the hats that you wear. Thank you for joining us, as always.
Always good to see you, Alex.
So, Justin, tell us, if you will, given all your economic expertise, whether or not this audit the Fed bill is a good idea or not.
Yeah, so it's brilliant political rhetoric, but in terms of what it does, it's either completely empty or completely harmful. Audit the Fed sounds like something we should all be in favour of, and in fact that is why we currently audit the Fed. The General Accountability Office audits the Fed carefully. The Fed releases its balance sheet literally every week. There's nothing here about funny business and money going missing in anything that Rand Paul's talking about. Instead, what he wants to do is extend or change the way that the Fed's relationship with Congress. And so the way things typically work is Congress tells an organisation like the Fed, here are the objectives we want you to go out and achieve, things like low unemployment and low inflation, and then it's their job to go and do it. What Rand Paul wants to do, he calls it auditing the Fed, but he really wants Congress to have get more involved in scrutinising the monetary policy decisions of the Fed. So this is basically a view that says we want the Fed to... the Fed's already very accountable for what it does with monetary policy. You'll see Ben Bernanke up on the Hill testifying all the time about what it is he's doing, or soon it will be Janet Yellen. But what this is going to do is, in some sense, give Rand Paul and the rest of Congress a greater say in monetary policy. If you like what they've done with fiscal policy...
You'll love what they do with monetary policy. But Justin, one thing that is interesting about this is this pits Rand Paul against the financial services sector. I mean, the markets do not want Washington entangling themselves up in monetary policy. And if you see the sensitive relationship between the Fed chair and the markets, I mean, Ben Bernanke wears red socks, the markets go up. He wears purple socks, the markets go down. I mean, every move is scrutinized. So to put the Fed chair ahead of Congress to discuss monetary policy could have an incredibly calamitous, tumultuous effect on the markets.
Well, the Fed chair already comes before Congress to discuss
monetary policy. Right, go ahead.
And so this is really upping the degree of scrutiny yet a step further. So let me say it far too starkly. Right now, the current proposal is Janet Yellen as Fed chair. Here's a counter: Congress and Rand Paul running monetary policy instead. Now, this isn't actually that proposal. It's a step closer to it, though. It's saying every meeting, all the information that they're processing, the decisions that they make, they want Rand Paul and the banking committee to be taking a much closer look at all of that, and because their view is somehow Congress would be doing a better job than the Fed. The markets don't buy it. Professional economists don't buy it. Our friends on the extremist libertarian right and the hard money gold bugs think this is fabulous.
Well, let me open this up to our folks in New York, Justin. David Corn, Rand Paul running monetary policy is literally like, we think that the Senate is apocalyptic now. Yeah. That's the true apocalypse.
There's a secret code here that Justin just referred to when you talk about go bugs and libertarians. If you go from Ron Paul to Rand Paul, they have both targeted the Fed because they don't like paper money.
Right.
They go bugs, and a lot of their followers have all sorts of conspiracy theories about the Fed, and some go even completely off the rails. And they've played up to this sort of paranoia, which is a component of the Tea Party right. And so when Rand Paul comes and says, "I just want to audit the Fed," you know, he's not waging a war on Christmas. He has been waging a war on the Fed, and this is just a clever way of doing it and trying to hold the Senate hostage to basically satisfy the paranoia he and his dad have been addressing for years.
But the thing I don't understand, Maggie, is Rand Paul he has been positioning himself for a 2016 run in recent months. Let's give him that, right? Reminding everybody of his kind of wackadoo financial theories, the fact that he is the son of Rand Paul, who would like us to go back to the gold standard, wants to abolish the Fed. Rand Paul's own sort of fiscal ideas, eviscerating the Departments of Energy, Commerce, State, the EPA, the FDA, getting rid of the Department of Education, privatizing Social Security, Medicare. This just dredges up all of that by putting himself front and center in this debate. I feel like as political calculus, it doesn't make that much sense.
David's point about how this satisfies the paranoia on the right is 100% accurate. What Rand Paul's calculation is, I believe, is, what people are going to take from this is Democrats, invoked the nuclear option. They took away our ability to stop anything, and I am making this case where I can sort of hold things down and slow things down. Look at what I was able to do to push back, and that will be what people hear more of than the actual policy behind it, because that's the way the coverage goes.
And that is a big problem, Heather.
Right.
I mean, these are incredibly fringe economic theories that are being pushed into the mainstream by someone who's possibly a leading contender for the Republican nomination in 2016.
Yeah, and it's obscuring what should actually be a real victory for people without work, for people who actually think the economy should serve our actual values, which is that Janet Yellen is someone who's not a Greenspan sort of fictional economics, the markets can take care of themselves person. I mean, she's not a really radical liberal, but she's a realist about what we should go to work they should go to work every day at the Fed to do, which is try to create more jobs and know that you have to have regulation to make markets work.
Yes, Jonathan, Janet Yellen is known as a dove in Wall Street circles, and I'll read an excerpt from the National Journal on what Yellen cares about. According to more than half a dozen longtime friends and colleagues, Yellen has two grand passions that will require government to help in a very big way: reducing chronically high unemployment, which is the focus of her life's work and is probably the single biggest economic problem in America today, and reining in Wall Street's excesses.
Yes, and her view has been in competition with the inflation hawk view since the onset of this crisis. And the evidence is very, very clear. The inflation dove worldview seems to be proven right time and time again. The Rand Paul view, and even the less crazy version of this you see in the Wall Street Journal editorial page and other precincts of the right, has just been disproven and disproven. The inflation that they warn of never appears. And even a lot of conservative intellectuals are really starting to take this problem seriously and starting to tell other conservatives, we've got to stop being so paranoid about inflation and start developing realistic thinking about monetary policy. But Rand Paul is not going along with that at all.
And just to be clear for folks, what it means when you are not so focused on an imaginary rise in inflation, it means that you can raise wages, right? So a big minimum wage sort of opposition point is that's going to raise the cost of living and therefore wipe out all of the minimum wage increase, right? You get people who will say that, even people who are making less than minimum wage, less than the raise themselves, and the deficit fears. So the two most powerful things we could do, raise wages and actually do some government spending, have been stopped intellectually and politically by this fear of inflation that hasn't borne out.
Justin, what's your view in terms of how much Janet Yellen can do to sort of address the idea of stagnating wages and income inequality?
I mean, the Fed's probably not the right first place to look for trying to think about the income distribution, with one very important exception. The key driver of income inequality, or one of the key drivers, is in fact unemployment. If there's a whole lot of people out there earning $0, think about what that does to inequality. And so she has a fairly direct tool here, which is put the pedal to the metal. Let's drive the economy out of the recession, get people back to work, and that's going to do more than just about any other program you can imagine to reduce inequality.
University of Michigan professor Justin Wolfers, who also has a dream resume for being on the show and talking about financial and economic affairs. Thank you, as always, for your time.
A pleasure.
Coming up,